Nobody brags about their Honda. Think about that for a second. You've heard people talk passionately about their BMWs, obsessed over their Mustangs, post photos of their Jeeps covered in mud like it's a personality statement. But Honda owners? They just drive. No announcements. No identity performance. They pull into parking lots, get out, and walk away without looking back once. And somehow, that's the most interesting thing about them. Because in a world where what you drive has become a louder statement than what you say, where a car is practically a billboard for who you want people to think you are, choosing a Honda is almost an act of resistance. Not loud resistance, not the kind that demands attention, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need an audience. Here's what's strange though. Honda isn't cheap. It isn't accidental. Nobody sleepwalks into a Civic. There are flashier options at the same price point. There are cars that turn heads, cars that signal wealth, cars that whisper, "Look at me," from 3 blocks away. And yet, the Honda owner looks at all of that, and they choose the one that just works. That choice is not boring. That choice is a psychological fingerprint. When you strip away the marketing and the metal, a car purchase is really just a decision about identity. What do I want the world to see? What do I want to feel when I'm behind the wheel? What does this object say about who I am, or who I'm trying to become? Every buyer answers those questions differently, and the Honda owner's answer is unlike almost anyone else on the road. But to understand what that answer actually is, you have to stop looking at the car entirely. You have to start looking at the person. Because the Honda isn't the story. It never was. The Honda is just the first clue. There's a word that follows Honda everywhere. Reliable. It shows up in every review, every conversation, every reason someone gives when you ask them why they bought one. It's just reliable. And people say it like it's the most straightforward thing in the world, like reliability is just a mechanical feature, something that lives in the engine, in the warranty, in the service record. But reliability is never just about the machine. When a person tells you they chose something because it's reliable, they're not describing the object, they're describing a wound, or a lesson, or both. Because nobody craves reliability in a vacuum. You only start prioritizing dependability when you've experienced deeply, personally, what it feels like when something fails you, when someone leaves without warning, when a plan collapses at the worst possible moment, when the thing you trusted breaks. Reliability isn't a preference, it's a response. And Honda owners, whether they've ever articulated this or not, are people who have quietly decided that the cost of being let down is higher than the reward of being impressed. That's not pessimism. That's a very specific kind of emotional intelligence, the kind that comes from paying attention to patterns, to consequences, to what actually matters when the moment stops being exciting and starts being real. Watch a Honda owner make a decision, any decision, not just about cars. They research, they think ahead. They're not chasing the best-case scenario, they're protecting themselves from the worst one. There's a psychological term for this kind of thinking. It sits close to what researchers call defensive pessimism. But it's not really pessimism at all. It's preparation dressed up in caution. It's someone who has learned, somewhere along the way, that being dazzled and being served are two completely different things, and they've chosen to be served. This is where it shifts, though, because there's a version of this story where the Honda owner sounds like someone playing it safe, someone afraid, someone who swapped ambition for comfort and called it wisdom. But look closer. The Honda owner isn't afraid of risk. They're just incredibly precise about which risks are worth taking. They'll bet on a career change. They'll move cities. They'll fall in love without guarantees. But they will not waste their emotional energy performing status through sheet metal. They have quietly, almost unconsciously, drawn a line between the risks that build something and the risks that just look good. That line is not cowardice. That line is clarity. And most people spend their entire lives never finding it. There's a certain kind of person who walks into a room and immediately feels the pull to be noticed. They adjust their posture. They speak a little louder. They wear the right thing, drive the right thing, reference the right things. Because somewhere underneath all of it, they're running a quiet calculation. If I look the part, maybe I'll feel the part. And there's nothing cruel about that. It's deeply human. The need for external validation is one of the oldest psychological currents there is. We all feel it. The question is just, how much do you let it steer you? Honda owners, by and large, have stopped letting it steer them. And that's a profound psychological shift that most people never actually complete. Think about what it takes to buy a car that generates zero social applause. No head turns, no impressed comments, no moment where someone in a parking lot glances over and nods with quiet envy. The Honda owner purchases all of that silence intentionally and then drives home completely unbothered. That's not indifference. Indifference is passive. This is something active. This is someone who has looked at the entire architecture of social performance, understood how it works, and then decided, consciously or not, that they don't want to play that game anymore. Psychologists talk about something called internal locus of control, the degree to which a person believes their outcomes come from their own choices rather than external forces or other people's perceptions. People with a strong internal locus don't need the audience. They've moved the approval mechanism from the outside world inward. They validate themselves. And when you meet someone like that, really meet them, there's a groundedness to them that's almost disarming. Honda owners tend to have that quality. Not all of them. Not perfectly. But there's a pattern there that's hard to ignore once you see it. They're the colleague who doesn't announce every achievement, but somehow always delivers. The friend who gives advice without needing credit for it. The person who shows up consistently, quietly, without the dramatic entrance, and turns out to be the most solid presence in the room. Their car is almost a preview of their character. Functional over flashy. Presence over performance. Depth over display. And here's what's interesting about that kind of confidence. It doesn't photograph well. It doesn't make for a compelling social media post. It doesn't generate the kind of surface excitement that gets people talking. But it sustains. It compounds. While everyone else is managing the exhausting performance of appearing successful, the Honda owner is just out there actually building something, quietly, efficiently, without waiting for applause. That's not a small thing. In a culture that has essentially monetized the need for validation, where entire industries exist to sell people the feeling of being seen, opting out of that system takes a kind of psychological strength that rarely gets recognized. Because it's invisible, just like the car. At some point in life, most people go through a phase where they need the world to confirm them. They need the title, the car, the apartment, the relationship, not just to have those things, but to be seen having them. And that phase isn't shallow. It comes from something real. From years of being told, directly or indirectly, that your worth is something that needs to be demonstrated, proven, displayed. So you display it. You curate it. You build a version of yourself that faces outward, designed for observation, optimized for approval. And then, if you're lucky, something quietly breaks, not dramatically. There's no single moment, no clean before and after. It happens in the margins. A morning where the expensive thing stops feeling like enough. A conversation where the impressive detail you dropped lands flat and you realize you needed it to land. A moment of stillness where you look at everything you've accumulated for other people's eyes and feel, underneath all of it, a strange and hollow kind of exhaustion. That's the turning point. And the Honda owner, psychologically speaking, has already been through it. Maybe they went through it young. Some people are just wired closer to that truth from the beginning. Maybe they went through it the hard way after years of chasing something that kept moving. But either way, they arrived at the same place. A place where the question stopped being, "What will this say about me?" and became something quieter, something more honest. What do I actually need? That shift sounds simple. It is not simple. Most people never fully make it. They stay suspended between what they want and what they want to be seen wanting, and the gap between those two things becomes the source of a very specific, very modern kind of unhappiness. The Honda owner closed that gap, not because they gave up on wanting things, but because they got precise about which wants were actually theirs. There's a concept in psychology around self-concordant goals, the idea that the pursuits which bring genuine satisfaction are the ones aligned with who you actually are, not who you're performing. People who chase self-concordant goals report deeper contentment, more resilience, less of that chronic background anxiety that follows you even when everything looks fine from the outside. They're not immune to struggle, but their struggle has direction. It means something. The Honda owner lives closer to that. Their car isn't a compromise. It isn't giving up. It's a declaration, one they never actually make out loud, because that would defeat the whole point. It says, "I know what I value. I know what I'm building, and I don't need you to understand it for it to be true." That's a rare thing to have made peace with, and here's what stays with you, long after this video ends. long after you've forgotten the specific words and moved on to the next thing your feed serves you. The Honda on the highway isn't just a car, it's a mirror, and depending on where you are in your own story, looking at it might make you feel one of two things: a quiet kind of recognition or a quiet kind of envy. Both of those feelings are worth sitting with, because one of them might be telling you something about yourself that you haven't been ready to hear yet.